You don't need a whole room just to stare at a computer, my mother said, setting down her fork like the conversation was already over. Your brother needs space to grow his business. I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. 3 days later, I was gone. Then the calls started. The home office wasn't much to look at from the outside. It was the third bedroom at the end of the hall, the one nobody had used since my grandmother stopped visiting. When I moved back in at 26, freshly laid off, student loans compounding interest like a personal vendetta, I asked if I could use it as a workspace. My mother said yes without hesitating. That was 3 years ago. In those 3 years, I had turned that room into the engine of everything. I sanded the floors, painted the walls a clean off-white, installed blackout curtains, and bought a standing desk that cost more than my first car payment. I ran Ethernet cable through the walls because the Wi-Fi on that side of the house was unreliable. I set up 2 monitors, a professional microphone for client calls, and a small bookshelf that held binders for every contract I had ever signed. I was a freelance UX designer. I worked with startups, mostly the kind that needed someone who understood both aesthetics and function, who could sit in on a Zoom call at 7 in the morning and sound polished and prepared. The office made that possible. Without it, I was just a woman with a laptop on a kitchen table, competing with the noise of a television that was always too loud and a refrigerator that hummed like it was clearing its throat. I also paid rent. Not market rate, because my mother wouldn't hear of it, but I paid $1,200 a month into the household. I covered the streaming subscriptions, the pest control service, and the annual fee for the home warranty my parents had signed up for and then forgotten about until the dishwasher flooded the kitchen 2 summers ago. I bought groceries twice a week. I drove my father to his cardiology appointments because he didn't like the highway and my mother got anxious behind the wheel in traffic. I was not a guest in that house. I was load-bearing infrastructure wearing a daughter's face. My brother Derek was 31 and had been in between things for the better part of 4 years. In between jobs, in between apartments, in between the person he was going to become and the person he currently was, which was someone who slept until 11 and referred to his various ventures with the confidence of a man who had never once experienced consequences. There had been a drop-shipping store, a sports memorabilia resale account, a brief and expensive flirtation with cryptocurrency, and most recently, a podcast about personal finance that had recorded exactly 4 episodes and accumulated a total of 900 listeners, most of whom were, I suspected, bots. His girlfriend Crystal had moved in 6 months ago. She was 24, had very long acrylic nails, and was deeply serious about becoming a lifestyle content creator. She had a ring light that she set up in the living room whenever the mood struck her, which was often enough that my father had started timing his afternoon naps around her filming schedule. Crystal was not unkind. She was simply a person who existed in a state of complete confidence that the world would arrange itself around her needs, which made her very compatible with Derek and very exhausting for everyone else. The dinner happened on a Thursday. I remember because I had just finished a presentation deck for a client in Austin and was running on 3 cups of coffee and the specific quiet satisfaction of having done good work. I came to the table in a reasonable mood. That was my mistake. My mother had made baked ziti. My father was already eating. Derek and Crystal were sitting close together, which I had learned to recognize as a staging choice, the physical equivalent of a press release. "We have some news," Derek said. He had the decency to wait until everyone had food on their plates. Crystal held out her left hand. The ring was large. Not real large, I suspected, but visually large, which in the context of content creation was arguably more important. My mother made a sound that I can only describe as operatic. My father reached across the table and clapped Derek on the shoulder. There was a moment of genuine warmth that I participated in, because I am not a monster. I congratulated them. I asked about the proposal. Crystal showed me a video on her phone. Derek had apparently orchestrated it at a rooftop restaurant, and there were already 4,000 views on TikTok. Then my mother said, "We should talk about the room." I set down my fork. "What room?" I said. It was not a question. "Your office," Derek said. He had the particular tone of someone who had rehearsed this moment but was pretending he hadn't. "Crystal needs a studio. Somewhere professional. To build the brand, before the wedding content starts rolling out." "The brand," I repeated. "It's a real thing," Crystal said, not unkindly. "Brand deals for wedding content are huge right now. We're talking partnerships with jewelry companies, with travel, with catering, but I need a dedicated space. Good lighting, quiet background, somewhere I can film without the TV on in the background. I looked at my mother. It makes sense, my mother said. She had the look she got when she had already decided something and was presenting it as a group decision. You have your laptop. You can work anywhere, really. The kitchen table is perfectly fine. And Derek and Crystal need a real foundation. They're starting a life. I have a business, I said. I have client calls. I have contracts that require a professional setup. I spent money on that room. We can reimburse you for the furniture, Derek said, which told me he had thought about this enough to predict my objections, but not enough to take them seriously. It's not the furniture. Honey, my mother said, her voice taking on the gentle, slightly pitying tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. You're 30 years out of 30. You're not married. You don't have kids. Crystal and Derek are building something. Don't you want to support that? My father said nothing. He was eating ziti. He would not intervene. He never did. He had a talent for being present in a room while being entirely absent from its conflicts, like a piece of furniture that sometimes commented on sports. I looked at Crystal's ring. I looked at my brother's rehearsed expression of reasonable expectation. I looked at my mother, who had said yes when I asked for that room 3 years ago, and had apparently not considered that yes was a thing that could last. I'll think about it, I said. I did not think about it. I made a decision on the drive home from work the following Monday, sitting in traffic on the I-94, listening to a podcast about financial independence. The decision was not dramatic. It didn't feel like a breaking point or a revelation. It felt like a door closing quietly in a room that nobody was watching. I found an apartment by Wednesday. It was on the north side, 7th floor, 1,200 square feet. It had a dedicated second bedroom with a closet, which I could convert into an office. It was more expensive than what I paid my parents, but not by as much as I expected, and the math of what I was actually subsidizing in that house, utilities, groceries, services, my father's copays had become, when I actually sat down and added it up, a number that made me set my phone face down on the table and stare at the ceiling for a while. I signed the lease on Friday. I gave 60 days' notice to my parents that same evening, which was more courtesy than they had extended to me. I told them calmly, at the dinner table, the same table where they had told me my office was being reassigned. I said I had found a place. I said I would be out by the 1st of the month. My mother looked surprised. Derek looked momentarily uncertain, which I found interesting. My father asked if I had considered the commute. I said I had. That was the whole conversation. The move itself took 1 weekend. I hired a crew because I had learned long ago that borrowing help from people who might later use it as leverage was more expensive than just paying strangers. I packed my monitors, my desk, my Ethernet cables, my carefully labeled binders. I took the curtains I had installed because I had paid for them and they were mine. I took the bookshelf. I left the room the way I had found it. Bare floors, white walls, a window with no curtain looking out at the backyard. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "Movers are done. The room is ready. Congratulations again." I also, before I left, made several administrative changes that I felt were both reasonable and overdue. I removed myself from the electric bill, which was in my name because I had set it up when my parents went through a period of late payments, and I had stepped in to stabilize it. I called the pest control company and had the account transferred. I canceled the home warranty auto-renewal. I removed my credit card from the grocery delivery account. I changed the password on the family streaming plan and downgraded it to a single-screen subscription in my own name. None of this was vindictive. It was simply accurate. I was not in that house anymore. The accounts should reflect that. The first 2 weeks were the quietest I had experienced in years. My apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility. I set up my office in the second bedroom and had a client call on the third morning that went beautifully. 30 minutes of uninterrupted, professional conversation with a founder in Seattle who signed a contract by end of day. I bought a plant. I slept without hearing the television through the wall. Then, gradually, the texts began. My mother first. The pest control people said our account was canceled. Did something happen? I replied that I had transferred the account when I moved and included the name of the company so she could set up a new one. She did not reply to that. A week later, Derek. "Hey, the streaming thing is saying wrong password." I replied that I had changed my account when I moved and set it to single screen. I suggested he sign up for his own subscription. He sent back a thumbs down emoji, which I saved as a screenshot for no reason I could entirely articulate. My father called on a Tuesday evening. The home warranty thing lapsed, he said. Your mother got a letter. The renewal was in my name, I said. I let it lapse when I moved. You can call them and set up a new account. I can send you the company name. We don't know how any of that works, he said, and his voice had the particular heaviness of a man who had spent decades allowing that to be someone else's problem. I can walk you through it, I said. But I can't do it for you, he sighed. Your mother is upset. I understand. You just left, Morgan. You didn't even give us time to adjust. I gave 60 days notice, I said. That's more than most tenants give. He was quiet. Then, that's a cold way to talk about your family. I'm not trying to be cold, I said. I'm trying to be clear. I moved out. That means the accounts and the bills and the services that were in my name needed to move with me or get transferred to you. That's what happened. It's not a punishment. It's just logistics. He didn't call again that week. The first time I saw the studio content, I was eating lunch at my kitchen island, scrolling without much intention, and Crystal's account surfaced in my recommended feed. She had posted a room tour. The office, my old office, was now painted a color she captioned as Dusty Rose Dream, and there was a ring light on a stand in the corner where my monitor used to sit. She had placed a velvet love seat against the wall I had painted, and filmed herself sitting on it, explaining her upcoming wedding content series to the camera. The comments were small, a few hundred views, a lot of fire emojis. One comment said the room looked like the inside of a candle shop, which, looking at it, was not entirely wrong. I put my phone down and finished my soup. By the 6th week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Crystal. She had gotten my number from Derek. Her voice was tight in the careful way of someone who was trying to sound casual about something that was not casual. Hey, Morgan. So, random question. Do you remember who did the electrical in the office? Because one of the outlets is being weird. Like it's tripping a breaker whenever we plug in more than 2 things. I don't remember the name, I said. I found him on Angie. You can search licensed electricians in the area. Oh, she said. It's just, like Derek said you might know. And also we were wondering, because the Wi-Fi in that room is really bad and we looked it up and apparently there's a cable in the wall that goes to a router or something. That's the Ethernet cable I ran when I set up the office, I said. When I moved out, I deactivated the network connection on that end. You'd need to either reactivate the account with the provider or run your own cable. Silence. So that's like, expensive? She said. It depends on the provider, I said. I can send you some information if you want. Could you maybe just come by and look at it? Since you set it up and everything, Derek said you'd probably... I'm not going to be able to do that, I said. But really, a call to the internet provider would get you started. It's not as complicated as it sounds. She said okay in a voice that suggested she did not believe me, and also did not understand why I wasn't solving this for her, which told me she had been briefed on a version of the situation that cast me as the unreasonable party. I texted her the name of our internet provider anyway, because I am not actually interested in watching people struggle, only in not being the one who catches them every time they fall. The call I had been waiting for came on a Sunday afternoon in October. It was my mother. She skipped the preliminary warmth, which told me she had been rehearsing. We need to talk about the finances, she said. Okay, I said. The bills are more than we expected. Your father and we hadn't been managing things ourselves for a while, and getting everything sorted out has been... She paused. It's been a lot. I understand, I said. Derek isn't contributing the way we hoped. He's focused on the podcast and helping Crystal with the channel, and we didn't want to put pressure on them right when they're trying to launch. Mom, I said. She stopped. What is it that you're asking me? A long pause. We thought you might be able to help. Temporarily. Just while we get the budget sorted out. You were always so good at that. I had thought about this moment. I had actually sat with it, late at night in my new apartment, and tried to be honest with myself about what I felt. The answer was not simple. There was love in there. Genuine and complicated and frustrating. The kind that doesn't switch off because a dinner went badly. There was also something that had been building for 3 years. Quiet and patient. A recognition that the help I gave was never going to be enough to buy my way into being treated like a full human being in that house. I'm not going to do that, I said. My voice was even. I'm not going to contribute to the household finances anymore. I moved out. That was the whole point. But we're struggling. I know. That's a real thing, and I'm sorry it's hard. But the answer to struggling isn't me. The answer is Dad going through the accounts with you and both of you making a budget. The answer might be Derek and Crystal paying actual rent or getting jobs that cover their expenses. The answer might be selling the house if it's too much to maintain. Those are all real options. I'm not. You sound very hard, she said. I've been very soft for a very long time, I said. This is just what it sounds like when I stop, she cried. Not performatively, my mother was not a performer. Whatever her other qualities, she cried the way people cry when something they believed was permanent turns out not to be. I stayed on the line. I did not apologize. I said I loved her, because I do, and that I was still her daughter, and that none of this meant I had stopped caring about her. It meant I had started caring about myself enough to stop disappearing into her needs. When we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time. 3 weeks later, I sent Derek an invoice. I had gone back through my records. I keep very good records, occupational habit, and itemized everything I had contributed to the household beyond the rent I paid. The electrical work I had coordinated and paid for when the kitchen circuit kept tripping. The plumber I'd called and covered when the bathroom pipe leaked into the ceiling below. The new water heater filter I'd ordered and installed 2 winters ago. The cumulative grocery overages I had covered every month for 2 years. The accountant I'd hired to sort out my parents' tax situation one year when the numbers were a mess and my father had simply not filed. The total came to just under $19,000. I did not expect to be repaid. I want to be clear about that. I sent the invoice because I wanted there to be a document that said, "This happened. This was real. These were not gifts. These were not the natural contributions of a grateful child. These were the labor of a person who was treated like staff and called family when it was convenient." Derek called me 20 minutes after I sent it. "What is this?" "It's an itemized summary of the financial contributions I made to the household beyond my monthly rent," I said. "I'm not demanding payment. I just wanted it documented." "Documented," he repeated, with the tone of someone encountering a concept that baffles them. "For who?" "For me," I said. "For the record. So that when someone says, I never did anything for this family, there's a piece of paper that says otherwise." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Nobody's saying that." "Not yet," I said. He hung up. My mother called an hour later and did not mention the invoice, but talked for 20 minutes about how stress was affecting her sleep, which was her way of telling me things without technically saying them. I listened. I said that sounded hard. I suggested melatonin. The meeting happened at a coffee shop I chose because it was close to my apartment and far from theirs. I arrived first and ordered a black coffee and sat at a table by the window where I could see them coming. They arrived together, all 3 of them, my mother and father and Derek. Crystal stayed home. I noted that. They looked, if I'm honest, tired. My father's jacket was slightly wrinkled in the way that happened when my mother wasn't keeping up with laundry, which she didn't when she was stressed. My mother had her purse held against her body like a shield. Derek looked, for the first time in recent memory, like he wasn't performing anything. He just looked young. He looked like someone who had not fully understood until very recently that the scaffolding could actually come down. My mother said, "We miss you," I said. "I know. I miss you too." "Then come home," she said. "We can figure out the room. Crystal can film in the living room. The office can be yours again." I shook my head. "I'm not coming back, Morgan." My father's voice. He rarely used it with weight, but he did now. "We're asking you." "I heard you," I said. "And I love you. Both of you. All of you." I looked at Derek when I said this, because it was important that he understood I was not his enemy. But I have my own place now. I have my office. I have a life that works. And I spent 3 years in that house doing everything I could to make it work for all of us. And the moment I had one thing, one room, one space that was mine, the answer was that I didn't really need it. That my needs were smaller than someone else's wants. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. I can't go back to being that version of myself. Not because I'm angry. Because I finally know what it feels like when things are balanced, and I can't unknow it. My father looked at the table. My mother's eyes were wet. Derek said quietly. The podcast isn't going anywhere. I know that. Crystal knows that too. I think we're going to figure some things out. Good, I said, and I meant it. I paid for my coffee and I hugged all three of them before I left, which surprised them, I think. My mother held on for a beat longer than usual. I let her. Then I walked out into the cold air and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend. How'd it go? I typed back. Fine. Good, actually. Then I put my phone in my pocket and started walking toward the parking garage. The city was loud around me, in the specific, comfortable way of a place that doesn't need anything from you. Somewhere in that apartment on the 7th floor, my 2 monitors were asleep, my desk was clean, and the Ethernet cable ran directly from the wall to the router without passing through anyone else's needs. I had a project due Thursday. A small startup, 2 founders, a product that helped people manage their household budgets. The irony was not lost on me. I had a call with them in the morning. I got in my car and drove home. The hardest thing I ever did was not leave. Plenty of people leave. They slam doors and make speeches and post about it. The hardest thing was leaving quietly, with kindness, without a villain arc, and then holding that line every single day when the calls came and the texts came and the voices on the other end of the phone said, "But we're family. They are my family." That is exactly why I left. Because I wanted to still love them in 10 years, and I couldn't do that from inside a house where I was the ceiling, the floor, and the walls, and nobody thought to ask whether I was tired of holding everything up. You don't have to burn anything down. You don't have to make anyone the bad guy. You just have to decide, quietly and completely, that your life belongs to you. Then you pack your monitors, cancel the accounts, and go build it.